Hello, welcome back to the reading of the poem of the Man God written by Maria Valtorta, Volume 2, Chapter 206, Part 2, The Parable of the Ten Virgins and the Parable of the Royal Wedding. Jesus continues, crowned with flowers, a soul must weave its daily garland of virtuous deeds, because nothing withered or slovenly looking is to appear in the presence of the Most High. I said daily, because a soul does not know when God, bridegroom, may appear and say, come. Therefore you must never tire renewing the garland. Be not afraid. Flowers wither, but the flowers of virtuous wreaths do not wither. God's angel, whom every man has at his side, picks up these daily wreaths and takes them to heaven, and they will be there, the throne for the new blessed soul when it enters the nuptial house as the bride. They have lighted lamps. They have them to honor the bridegroom and to see the way. How refulgent faith is, and what a kind friend it is. It gives a flame as bright as a star, a flame that smiles because it is sure in its certainty, a flame that brightens also the instrument supporting it. Also the flesh of man nourished with faith seems to become brighter and more spiritual, even in this world, free from premature withering, because he who believes holds on to God's words and commandments in order to possess God, his ultimate aim, and therefore he shuns corruption, is not perturbed or afraid, feels no remorse, is not compelled to make an effort to remember lies or to conceal evil deeds, and remains young and handsome by means of the beautiful incorruptibility of saints, flesh and blood, mind and heart free from lust, to contain the oil of faith, to give light without smoke, a constant will to feed the light forever, that light forever. Everyday life, with its disappointments, ascertainments, contacts, temptations, disagreements, tends to diminish faith. No, it must not happen. Go every day to the source of the sweet, sapiential oil of God. A lamp with little oil can be put out by the least puff of wind or by the heavy dew of the night. The night, the hour of darkness, of sin, of temptation, comes for everybody, but it is night for the soul. But if the soul is filled to the brim with faith, its flame cannot be put out by the wind of the world or by the fog of sensuality. And finally, vigilance, vigilance, vigilance. He who is unwarily trustful and says, oh, God will come on time while my light is still on, and makes up his mind to go to sleep instead of keeping awake, and goes to sleep without providing what is necessary to get up and be ready at the first call. And he who waits until the last moment to procure the oil of faith or the strong wick of goodwill runs the risk of being left out when the bridegroom arrives. Be vigilant, therefore, with prudence, perseverance, purity, confidence, so that you may be always ready for God's call, because you really do not know when he will come. My dear disciples, I do not want you to be afraid of God. On the contrary, I want you to have faith in his goodness. Both you who will remain here and you who will be going away must consider that. If you do what the wise virgins did, you will be invited not only to escort the bridegroom, but like the Virgin Esther, who became queen in the place of Vashti, you will be chosen and elected to be brides as the bridegroom, found more approval and favor with you than with anybody else. I bless you who are about to go away. Take my words with you for yourselves and for your companions. May the peace of the Lord be always with you. Jesus goes near the peasants to say goodbye to them once more, but John of Endor whispers to him, Master, Judas is here now. It does not matter. Take them to the wagon and do as I told you." The people at the meeting slowly go away. Many talk to Lazarus, and Lazarus turns towards Jesus, who after leaving the peasants was going towards him, and says, "Master, before leaving us, speak to us again. It is the desire of the hearts of the people of Bethany." Night is falling, but it is placid and serene. If you wish to gather on the mown hay, I will be speaking to you before leaving this friendly town. Or we can meet tomorrow at dawn, because the hour of farewell has come. "Later, this evening," they all shout. "As you wish. Go now. I will speak to you halfway through the first watch." And, in fact, untiring, Jesus sets out towards the middle of a recently mown meadow, on which the withering hay forms a sweet-smelling soft rug, while the sun sets, and also its glow disappears, and crickets begin their early, uncertain, solitary chirping. He is followed by the apostles, the Marys, Martha, and Lazarus, and their household, Isaac and his disciples, and I would say by all the people of Bethany. Among the servants there is the old man and the woman, the two who on the Mount of Beatitudes found comfort for the rest of their days. Jesus stops to bless the patriarch, who kisses his hand weeping, and caresses the boy walking beside Jesus and says to him, "You are happy that you can follow him all the time. Be good. Be careful, son. You are very lucky indeed. A crown is suspended over your head. You are blessed." When they are all settled, Jesus begins to speak. After the departure of our dear friends, who needed to be confirmed in the hope, nay, in the certainty that little knowledge is required to be admitted to the kingdom, that only a minimum truth on which one's good will may work is sufficient, I will now speak to you, who are much happier than they are, because you enjoy much more material comfort, and you have greater help from the Word. Only by thought I can extend my love to them. Here, my love reaches you also through my Word. Therefore, you are to be treated both here on the earth and in heaven with greater strength, because more will be asked of those to whom more was given. They, the poor friends who are going back to their prison, have the least welfare, and on the contrary, the greatest sorrow. Therefore, there are only promises of benignity for them, because everything else would be superfluous. I solemnly tell you that their lives are penance and holiness, and nothing else is to be imposed upon them. And I also solemnly tell you that, like wise virgins, they will not let their lamps go out until the hour they are called. Let them go out? No. The light of their lamps is the only good they possess. They cannot let it go out. I solemnly tell you that, as I am in the Father, so the poor are in God. That is why I, the Word of the Father, wanted to be born poor and to remain poor, because amongst the poor I feel closer to the Father, who loves the least people and is loved by them with all their strength. The rich have many things. The poor have but God. The rich have friends. The poor are alone. The rich have many comforts. The poor have none. The rich have many distractions. The poor have but their work. Money makes everything easy for the rich. The poor have also the cross of having to be afraid of diseases and famine, because they mean starvation and death to them. But the poor have God, their friend, their comforter, he who distracts them from their painful present by means of heavenly hope. He to whom man can say, and they know how to say it because they are poor, humble, alone, "Father, support us in your mercy." What I say on this land of Lazarus, a friend of mine and a friend of God, although he is so rich, may seem strange. But Lazarus is an exception amongst the rich. Lazarus has been successful in achieving the most difficult virtue to be found on the earth, and even more difficult to be practiced when it is recommended by other people. The virtue of freedom from wealth. Lazarus is just. He does not feel offended. He cannot be offended because he knows that he is the rich poor man, and thus my concealed reproach does not affect him. Lazarus is just, and he knows that the word of great people is as I say. I therefore speak and say, I solemnly tell you that it is much easier for a poor man to be in God than it is for a rich one. And in the heaven of my Father and yours, many seats will be occupied by those who on the earth were despised, because they were the least amongst men, like trodden dust. The poor kept in their hearts the pearls of the words of God. They are their only treasure. Who has only one precious thing watches over it. Who has many is bored and absent-minded, proud and sensual. That is why he does not admire with humble loving eyes the treasure given by God, and confuses it with other treasures, only apparently precious treasures, which are the riches of the earth, and he thinks, it is only out of kindness that I accept the words of one who is like me, flesh-wise, and by means of strong flavors of sensuality, he blunts his capability of savoring what is supernatural. Strong flavors, yes, very spicy to disguise their stench and their putrid flavor. But listen, and you will understand better how worldly cares, riches, and orgies prevent one from entering the kingdom of heaven. Once a king celebrated the wedding of his son. You can imagine the feast at the palace. He was the only son, and having reached the perfect age, he was getting married to his beloved bride. The father and king wanted the joy of his son to be surrounded with joy, as he was at last getting married to his dear fiancée. Among the many celebrations, he gave a sumptuous dinner, and he prepared it in good time, watching every detail, to ensure it was magnificent and worthy the wedding of the king's son. He sent out his servants early to tell friends and to allies, as well as the mighty ones of his kingdom, that the wedding was to take place on a certain evening, and that they were all invited, and that they should come to form a worthy retinue to the king's son. But friends, allies, and mighty ones of the kingdom did not accept the invitation. The king then, doubting that the first servants had not spoken clearly, sent out some more, who should insist, saying, Please do come, everything is now ready. The tables are laid in the hall. Rare wines have been brought from everywhere. Oxen and fattened cattle are already in the kitchen to be cooked. Women slaves are kneading flour to make cakes and crushing almonds in mortars to make the finest delicacies flavored with rare spices. The most clever dancers and musicians have been engaged for the feast. Come, therefore, or all the preparations will be useless. But friends, allies, and great ones of the kingdom either refused or said, We have other things to do, or pretended to accept the invitation, but then they attended to their own matters, some to their fields, some to their business, some to even less noble affairs. And finally, there were some who, bored with so much insistence, took the servant of the king and killed him to keep him quiet, as he insisted, saying, Do not refuse the king's invitation, or you may find yourself in trouble. The servants went back to the king and reported the situations, and the king flared up in a temper and sent his soldiers to punish the murderers of his servants and chastise those who had scorned his invitation, whilst he intended to reward those who had promised to come. But at the fixed hour on the evening of the feast, no one came. The king was very angry. He called his servants and said to them, On no account my son will be left without people who will give him a hearty welcome on the evening of his wedding. The banquet is ready, but the guests we invited are not worthy of it, and yet the nuptial banquet of my son is to take place. Go, therefore, to the squares along the streets, stand at the crossroads, stop the passers-by, gather together those who are standing there, and bring them all here. Let the hall be filled with joyful people. The servants went. They went out along the streets. They spread out on the squares. They stood at crossroads. They gathered as many people as they could find, both good and bad, rich and poor, and took them to the royal palace. And they gave each of them the means to be worthy to enter the hall of the nuptial banquet. Finally, they led them into the hall, which was full of jubilant people, as the king desired. This has been a reading from the poem of the Man God, written by Maria Valtorta, Volume 2, Chapter 206, Part 2, The Parable of the 10 Virgins and the Parable of the Royal Wedding. I'm sorry, the camera slipped. Thank you for listening. I will see you tomorrow. May God bless you, and may peace be with you.